actually innovation, we sometimes jump straight to tech, which is absolutely one part of that, but also it's about language and collaboration and community.
And our job is to make sure we have innovators ready and waiting so that when the industry puts out a call, we've got the right people there to respond to those calls.
I think innovation is literally the only thing that's going to get us from here to there.
We're actually the world's largest corporate buyer of renewable energy.
Innovation in clean energy is essential to meeting climate targets. But innovation does not happen without collaboration. Collaboration between industries, sectors, and organizations, and that's what we're going to explore today. I'm Carolyn Kassan, Associate Dean at the NYU Center for Global Affairs. Welcome to the Clean Energy Revolution. So what does collaboration involve, and why is it so essential for fostering innovation? My co-host Laura, who you'll know as Less Waste Laura, was in London the other week at National Grid's Innovation Day. She spoke to leaders in clean energy who are championing the power of collaboration. Those conversations are coming up later in the show. But first, I'll be speaking to Steve Smith, Chief Strategy and Regulation Officer at National Grid. Steve, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Tell us about National Grid Partners. If you had to summarize what you do in a sentence, how would you do it?
So first of all, thank you for having me. Delighted to be here. So what do we do at National Grid Partners? So in a sentence, we're really here to help drive the innovation that's needed to deliver a clean, fair and affordable energy transition. And, that's primarily around the speed and scale at which we've got to sort of move as a company. We're just going to need a ton of innovation because we're not going to get there fast enough if we do it the way we've done things historically.
Excellent. So you've said innovation now a few times. So how do you define innovation in the energy transition?
I'm asked that question a lot. I mean, to quote a recent film, I sort of describe it as everything everywhere all at once. So, I mean, in essence, if you think
it's a good film.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's a great movie. But if you think about all the different aspects of what gets you from the generation of energy all the way down to your house, every part of that needs to change. So, the way we generate electricity is changing, from fossil fuels to renewable sources. The way we think about the grids that transport that energy also changing, and lots of scope for innovation there with the application of things like AI and, modern computing power, and then all the way down to the customers. So historically, customers have had a pretty passive relationship with energy. So you flicked on the light switch and it came on and you were happy and that's all you really cared about. Now you've got customers who've got, solar panels on their roof, maybe a battery in their home, thinking about electric vehicles. So innovation is about every different aspect of that. And particularly on the customer side, moving them from these sort of passive consumers who just sort of expected it to work to, actually interacting more with us and the way they use and consume energy.
Which I personally find really exciting as someone who's an educator in the energy space. It's also really wonderful to see students who are taking a so much deeper, more intentional interest in understanding how they use energy and where the energy that they use comes from. So thank you for all the work you're doing. Achieving net zero will obviously require ongoing innovation in clean tech and the way we collaborate with each other, including manufacturers, governments, stakeholders, the full gamut, everyone. What innovations and collaboration are you seeing, and how are they furthering the energy transition?
Sure. So start with government. I mean, and sort of widen that out, not just to government, but regulators. So there's a huge amount going on in the US. So Department for Energy is funding, lots of really cutting edge work. So we've got a project with them at the moment, which is it's a bit techie, but I'll try and explain. So it's called Intelligent Substations, but this is them funding a different way of thinking about our grids. So our grids at the moment are fairly passive in that they sort of are engineered for the way the system used to work, which is big power stations that we can turn up and down that send the power down our transmission line, distribution lines all the way to your home. And in future, they're going to be very different. So they're going to be two-way, as we talked about. Now many customers generate their own electricity. So sometimes they're pulling off our grids. Other times they're pushing power onto the grid. So a really exciting project where they're funding us to think about what are the different mechanisms. How do we use sort of AI to be able to have networks that are much more dynamic and can manage themselves effectively in two directions, with a view to making them even more reliable. So we have very, very reliable networks at the moment, but how do we get to the point, if you're relying on electric for your heating, for your transport, as well as for your lighting and everything else, any sort of outage is going to be really, really difficult. So helping us, manage those things. And then on the UK side, we've got a lot of regulatory funding. So we got really interesting projects where, for example, we've got to build our networks out to electrify heat and transport. And so thinking about how can we change the way we design and build our networks to make them more modular so that we can just put extra capacity on much, much faster. So those are examples of things that the government's doing to help us. Sort of with manufacturers and others. So we recently had this amazing event in London where we sort of hosted Innovation Day, and we had everyone there. So we had some of the companies we invest in, some of the big, equipment manufacturers, and all just sort of sharing perspectives on, what we were doing in the innovation space, because, we need to work together, but also make sure that we don't duplicate efforts. So a lot of it is about just bringing all those different people together and, just sharing ideas, sharing success, and also sharing things that we've learned where, one of the first things you learn in innovation is, probably 9 out of 10 things don't work, and you learn as much from what fails as what does. So because of this race to get to net zero, that we're all on, it's really important that, we share those successes, but also those failures so that people don't, go down blind alleys that others have tried.
Well, thank you. Those are wonderful examples of both collaboration, but also some of the, the harder realities in terms of confronting the challenges. So thank you for that. So we're going to go to you in terms of talking about National Grid Partners. So can you tell us about what your work at National Grid Partners and what strategies are your team responsible for as it relates to innovation in the industry?
Yeah, so broadly, the way I think about National Grid Partners, so we are there to support our business units, both in the US Northeast, but also in the UK, play the role they need to play in delivering the transition. So we have an investment arm that basically looks at, the brightest and the best of the climate tech startups that can help us on that journey. So we've invested just shy of about $500 million to date in over 50 different companies that we think can help with different aspects of the things we need to do. And that can be everything from hardware, so new technologies to deploy on our network, software, down to things that can help customers with that transition. So there's a big investment piece where we'll go and invest in a startup, and then we'll help them by, allowing them to deploy their technology on our network, prove out that it works. And then at that point, hopefully what we can then do is basically help them scale, not just across our networks, but then we have something called the Next Grid Alliance, which is a grouping of about 120 global utilities. And then we can say, look, we found this thing, it works, it helps us deliver. And so, we can share that and hopefully help make them successful. So that's one big piece around investment. I think the second piece then is around, we work with our business units, and they'll sort of say, these are the things that we're struggling with. These are the things that we need help with, whether it's building capacity faster, connecting more people to our grids. And we have the capacity to, if we can't find a startup or somebody, in that space who can help, we can help spin up ideas and solutions, inside the company to help them. So that's our sort of venture acceleration team. And then, the third part really is communication, and just that thing we were just talking about, which is how do we really share what we're doing, what's working, and how do we learn from what's going on? Because, the physics of these problems don't change whether you're in the US, the UK, whether you're in South America, whether you're in Asia. So there's a huge amount we can learn by using those networks and finding out what's going on elsewhere in the world. So it's all of those things to try and bring all of that knowledge and expertise from the outside into National Grid. But then also there's a part about taking some of our knowledge and expertise and sharing it outside of National Grid.
Thank you for that. You kind of teed me up perfectly for the next question that I want to ask you. You're going to hear later in the show from my co-host Laura, who spoke with Denise Massey. And Denise is the managing director of the Energy Innovation Center in the UK, and she says that the change we need in the energy industry won't come from tech; it'll come from people. Working together is the answer. What are your thoughts on that statement?
So first of all, Denise, I know well, and she's absolutely right. So when I think about what we do, the biggest challenge we have, we find these great technologies, we prove them at a small scale, and then it's that challenge of how do we get our businesses and other utilities to scale them quickly. And all of my experience suggests that at that point, it becomes all about culture. So utilities traditionally are quite risk averse. There's a good reason for that. We have to keep our customers and our colleagues safe. We have to run reliable networks, but that can mean that we have a culture that at times can be sort of resistant to change. So the only way you really get this to happen is you need those amazing colleagues who are willing to take those risks, to have that vision and to really sort of drive. And, I can't resist giving sort of a shout out to a colleague here, because I think it's really important part of driving that culture. So a great example of that would be an amazing technology, which I can talk more about, that we've recently sort of deployed in New York, where we put sensors on our transmission lines so we can get more capacity out of our network. That wouldn't have happened without an amazing colleague called Ken Buskey, who, essentially we found the technology, but we needed somebody in our control room who got passionate about it and was willing to drive it forward and really drive that deployment. So that's a great example of what Denise is saying. We found the technology, but without that culture and that colleague who's really willing to, stick his neck out and drive that change, then it just doesn't happen in my experience.
And quick follow-up, was Ken then able to sort of drive the kind of the enthusiasm amongst his team for the larger deployment?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's a key part of it. Getting the senior tie-in, getting his team excited about it, and it's all of those things that are required to take something on paper, which everyone says, well, this is a good idea, to actually the implementation, and it's there and it's live and it's working.
That's excellent. A wonderful example. Thanks. So Laura, my co-host, also caught up with Jake Auster, who's Director of Energy and Environmental Policy at Amazon. The conversation is also coming up later, but I was interested to hear Jake's perspective on collaboration between utilities and the tech giants like Amazon and Google. Again, I'm going to ask you another to kind of respond to a comment that Jake made. Jake made the comment that we often think of the energy sector as just the ones making and supplying the energy, but the end user is just as important. How do you view collaboration between supplier and user? And what are you working towards at National Grid Partners to make that transaction more efficient and smoother?
Yeah, so again, it sounds funny. It sounds like we kind of talked beforehand, but we didn't. But I mean, I was on a call with Jake, ironically, about just last week, and he also appeared at our Innovation Day. But look, he's absolutely right, and in the specifics of what Jake's thinking about, and then I'll sort of broaden it out. Amazon, massive customer of most utilities. We all know about AI and the exciting things that creates and the opportunities that creates. And they're going to be huge new loads on our system. So, working collaboratively with the likes of Amazon, which is why I was talking to Jake, and other providers, so that we can basically find out what they need and work together. So historically, and there's lots in the press at the moment, are all these new data centers going to overwhelm the grid, and is it going to be a problem? Well, no, not if we work together. And I think that's why we're all talking to each other. So that's at the very massive scale. So the sorts of things that Jake and his company will want to connect to our network are huge. They potentially sites that are running a gigawatt. But going back to where we started and thinking about customers like you and I, when we're wearing our hat at home, fundamentally that change a relationship. So historically, customer, what did they think about their utility? Well, they got a bill once a month. Quite often that would make them grumpy if their bill was higher than they thought. And they'd very rarely need to contact us or have anything to do with us unless, there was a power outage or something went wrong. Whereas now, if I'm a customer, I may need to speak to us because, I want to put rooftop solar on, or I want to put a heat pump in my house, or I want an EV charger. And as I said, it's going to become a much more two-way relationship where it's like, well, if I'm putting power onto your network, how are you going to pay me, and how does that work? So I think there's huge opportunity for us to go from a sort of fairly passive relationship where, people got their bill and thought about us when things went wrong to a much more active relationship. And that's going to involve, going back to the previous, a lot of cultural change on our part and a different relationship with our customers.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I see it as a very sort of exciting development that, as you pointed out, right, moving from passivity to much more sort of active involvement, educating the customer, having the customer sort of really be part of, the energy transition and the changes that you're making. So I think it's an exciting change that we're seeing. You and I both share an economics background. How do you see the need for collaboration between banks and energy companies in accelerating the energy transition?
So again, great question. So I've spent, more than 25 years in utilities, but I also sort of had 10 years out until about 3 years ago, actually working for Britain's largest retail bank. And there is, a real synergy, and essentially it's because a lot of the things that customers are going to need to do for the transition is going to involve, them having to, spend money in a way that typically a lot of that investment historically has been the other side of the meter. So our side of the meter. So if you're a customer, if you're thinking about making the transition to an electric vehicle, most people, finance cars these days. They don't go out and buy them with their own money. If you're thinking about, transitioning from a gas boiler or furnace to heat pumps or installing rooftop solar or batteries in your house, that's quite often quite a large, upfront cost then for savings that will last for 10, 20 years. So banks have a potentially really important role to play in helping customers sort of finance that. And certainly when I was at, the UK's largest retail bank, huge interest in doing that and huge commitment to helping customers do that. So I think there's a natural relationship there to help customers with that financing piece of some of the things they might want to do for the transition.
Excellent. Thank you. What exciting strategies for grid optimization can you share with us?
There's a couple of things to say. I mean, first of all, before we get into sort of the exciting technologies, we all have to face into the reality that we are going to need, bigger grids. And in essence, both our electric systems and our networks in both the US and the UK were built for a system where we had large thermal fossil-based power stations, and it moved that power passively down our networks to customers. And, the new sources of generation, whether it's offshore renewables, onshore renewables, solar, are all in different locations. So we are going to have to build new and more infrastructure. I think where the grid optimization comes in, which is really exciting, is it can help reduce the impact of some of that infrastructure. So maybe fewer towers, shorter towers, less new lines because we use new technology, but then also making sure where we have an existing network that we get as much out of that as possible. And I think there's broadly two real approaches to it. There's a hardware approach. So there's some really interesting new technologies coming out, which are basically the wires that hang off our pylons or hang off our distribution lines, new materials that can allow you to get more power down the lines if you put these new materials on, have longer spans between lines. So that means your transmission towers don't have to be as tall, or they can be spaced further apart. So those are sort of the hardware things. And then on the software side, I sort of talked about a company called Line Vision, which allow us to basically put sensors on our lines so that we can be more confident, depending on the temperature and the weather, about how much power we can put through them. So where we've deployed those on, if all the stars align, we can potentially get 40% more power out of the lines we have versus today. So these are great opportunities, as I said, to get more out of the networks we have and to make sure where we need to build new infrastructure that hopefully, we can do that in a more sensitive way. And reduce some of the the visual and environmental impact of those new lines.
Great. So you kind of answered the question that I was going to ask you, but maybe if there's other kind of innovation that you'd like to also touch upon. So where do you see the most impactful innovation in the industry, and where's there room for more? You just shared with us some different innovations that sort of are happening in terms of the hardware and the software, but are there other areas that you are particularly excited about?
I think, the one thing that really excites me, and we haven't touched on much, like we've been investing in companies that, use artificial intelligence for a number of years now. So, artificial intelligence can transform every different aspect of what we do. So we've got companies that use artificial intelligence to help us in our contact centers. So, when we're talking to customers, and that's either talking to them direct over the phone, or, dealing with queries they're sending us digitally, AI can massively make it much, much easier for us to get quickly to, answering the customer's query and dealing with it and actioning it, to, we're using AI to manage how we cut back vegetation. So if you run a distribution system and it's above ground, then, typically when a storm comes, what takes your lines out is trees and other things falling on them. So we've got AI using, satellite imagery, high resolution, to tell us where we've got risks and where we need to, cut back vegetation. And then I think some of the next frontier for AI is things like, using AI to predict where and how we need to sort of maintain our networks. So at the moment, we typically maintain on the basis of condition and age of networks, but AI opens up this amazing prospect. And we've got some companies that are starting to do this on bits of the network, where the AI is, listening and, looking at the condition of our assets and actually predicting where, we need to make interventions. So I know there's a huge amount of hype around AI and all of those things, but I think actually in our businesses, we're seeing, and through the companies we've invested in, we're seeing real practical applications that could really transform. And that's about making our networks more reliable, cheaper to run, safer to run, all of which is obviously hugely important, both for our customers and our colleagues.
So do you see AI revolutionizing clean energy? I mean, is that like, do you see that as the kind of a key innovation in?
Yeah, and it's funny. It's sort of a double-edged sword, because, it's going to put a lot more demand on our system. So, these AI models consume quite a lot of power. So we're going to see a lot of load growth from it. But as I said, I think everything from the way we design our networks, build them, operate them, and also how we cope with this much, much more complex world where customers, we don't just have to predict their demand, but we also have to predict their supply. When are they going to be generating? When are they going to be consuming? And they've just got a lot more load on our system because they've got a vehicle and they've got, their heating tied to it. Computationally, that would become hugely challenging for us with the way we've done things historically. And AI offers a real opportunity for us to, think very differently about how we, model and manage those risks. So I'm hugely optimistic about, the overarching impact of AI on everything we do. And, we're seeing that in the companies we invest in that, as I said, interestingly, have been around for quite some time. So although AI is only starting to capture the public imagination in the last sort of 18 months, we've been kind of in this space for, probably 4 or 5 years now.
No, I love that. Thank you, Steve, because this, this podcast, the Clean Energy Revolution, is meant to help educate people to understand what's happening and the exciting things that are happening in this space. And I think that idea that you shared in terms of the imagination, the new technologies, right, all of the moonshots that are, kind of being tried for, and seeing, maybe they're not all, of course, going to be successful, but the few that are can, and I think we will see. I always tell my students that where we are today would have been unthinkable, 30 years ago. So what we considered to be that, in our vernacular, how we talk about clean energy wasn't part of how we talked about energy, 2 decades ago. So why is it important for big businesses like National Grid to work with startups, smaller businesses, to innovate effectively? I mean, you gave us some examples in terms of what, as National Grid partners, how you partner with startups and how you're thinking about that innovation space. But, sort of thinking about big businesses, even outside of National Grid, partnering with small businesses. Would love to get your take on that.
So I think there is just so much, and what we're just discussing, that's really the beating heart of where the really exciting sort of, and also crazy stuff is going on. But really, for those companies to succeed, particularly in the utilities world, at the end of the day, they're going to have to prove their technology on, existing players' networks. So that's really what we bring together is, we see things we like, and it requires a lot of effort and a lot of work on our part. I mean, we are set up as a big multinational company to deal with big equipment manufacturers, and so it's required a lot of effort to work out how we can work with these sort of delicate startups that are very small without breaking them, because our procurement processes aren't designed for them. But it's amazing when it comes off, because, we've talked about things like, companies like Line Vision, we can pull them through from, some people who are working, at an incubator to live deployment, and then hopefully to become, a big company that can then, help global utilities. So I think it's hugely important, because they just have a different risk appetite, a different mindset. We can all innovate as big companies, but within a sort of narrow frame. And I think the real breakthrough technologies, and this has been true in most industries, it's the common trope that everyone says, but typically do start with a couple of people in a garage having an idea, and then, being willing to sort of take a risk. And that's just something that we need to embrace, because, as I said, if we go back to where we started, we are running out of time. We're way behind probably where we'd all like to be on the climate transition. So we're going to need that, because that's the only way we're going to get there, not just on time, but also in a way that's affordable for everyone as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate your time and sharing your expertise, and really your enthusiasm. It came through. So,
well, no, real great pleasure to do so. Really enjoyed the conversation, and glad that I was able to. I mean, as you can tell, I'm super excited, very enthusiastic, also a bit of a nerd when it comes to these things, but, it really matters. Okay. Thank you very much.
Now, Laura was lucky enough to be at National Grid's Innovation Day a couple of weeks ago, joined by leaders and innovators in clean tech. One of those was Matthew Syed, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and thought leader. He wrapped up the day with some pretty interesting remarks. Before we bring in Laura, let's hear what he had to say.
All of the innovations that we think of today, modern medicine, education, music, all lie downstream of the Industrial Revolution, the transferal of the stored solar energy into the mechanical power of the steam, via the steam engine that ran our factories, and then the second phase of this, which is electrification. This is a completely world-changing event. Ian Morris, the great historian from Stanford University, says the Industrial Revolution makes a mockery of the previous history of human drama. But we're coming to an end. Am I allowed to say this? Of the fossil fuel age. It has to end at some point, because it is a finite resource. This is why we have to transition, even if there was no climate change. Is that a fair point? This is an imperative. And the energy return on investment of fossil fuels is in decline. This is the amount of energy you get back. If a cheetah wants energy, it chases prey, but it has to get more meat from the kill than is expended in the chase, or it will die. The return on investment for energy is the amount of net energy that is gained from expending energy in order to gain it. And when we first got oil, we got about 100 barrels back for every barrel expended in the extraction process, because we were taking sweet crude from near the surface. Now we're having to dig deeper and frack harder. We're only getting 5 to 10 barrels back. And civilization runs on the net energy, and the net energy is slowly declining. What that tells us is, even though we have Moore's law, doubling of the capacity of transistors, it has not affected productivity in the countries near the technological frontier. Why has computation not done this for us? AI may not do it either. I'm not sure what the view is in the room. The reason is, if you increase the efficiency through which you translate energy into resources by, say, 10% a year, but the net energy is declining by 10% a year, productivity is flat. This, I think, helps to unlock the great stagnation in Western societies. It is an energetic and thermodynamic phenomenon. The question is, are we capable as a species of transitioning to new forms of energy that doesn't suffer from the finiteness of fossil fuels and the declining energy return on investment? It is the most important thing we have ever done. And my own view has been much more optimistic having come here today. And I really mean that. It's great to hear what you are doing with the grid, that you are improving the efficiency of the grid, working with policymakers to get these planning laws out of the way so that you can upgrade and extend the grid. Working with these other amazing companies. I saw a robo-dog over there that can go in and sort things out without a human taking on a risk, or these wonderful new pylons, which are more efficient, are they, near the M5? I just want to say that if you take away one thing from this event, the relationships you're building here, so that regulators can understand where we're going. Regulation is very important, but it can get in the way of innovation if it's poorly conducted. I talk about this a lot in black box thinking. The regulators need to understand what's happening on the front line to be facilitators rather than just obfuscators. You know what the biggest risk is? We don't successfully complete the transition. That would lead to a collapse of the kind that Rome experienced in the 5th century, where they're desperately trying to eke out the biomass economy, the agricultural economy, division of labor, great, fantastic, Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, but they didn't think about thermodynamics. You increase the division of labor, you have a more complex society, you need more energy to sustain that complexity. That's the first two laws of thermodynamics. This energy transition is where it is at. Division of labor alone won't help us. It will increase. Energy consumption is still going up by globally 2.5% a year. AI will accelerate that consumption. By 2027, AI will be using more energy than the whole of the Netherlands. It is you providing that energy, transmitting it, that is the answer to the predicament that we're facing at the moment. I think this energy problem sits behind the rise of populism, much of the polarization we're seeing. We're a pinched society. So I want to say thank you for what you're doing, and I'm more than happy to take a couple of questions if there's time. Thank you very much indeed.
As Matthew says, we have to transition away from fossil fuels. Even if there was no climate change, they're a finite resource. The collaboration between policymakers and energy providers is crucial. With that, let's join Laura in the Innovation Day studio to hear from her guests on this exact topic. Laura, over to you.
Welcome to the Clean Energy Revolution podcast. I'm Laura Young, also known as Less Waste Laura. I managed to speak to Denise Massey, who is part of the Innovation Centre, and it is a sphere where collaboration is at the heart of everything they do. They work with small businesses all the way up to huge organisations like National Grid to really push forward how we can be dynamic and agile, and here is what she had to say. Denise Massey, welcome to the Clean Energy Revolution podcast.
Well, thank you, Laura.
This is so relevant because you are the Managing Director of Energy Innovation Centre, and we are currently in London at Innovation Day with National Grid, so very relevant. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your role and particularly the Innovation Centre.
The Energy Innovation Centre I set up 16 years ago, unbelievable. And it was, in fact, to create a platform between small businesses and innovators and big utilities, because small business can't work with big business. Yeah. You know, they have different drivers, pace, money, language, everything. So we recognised that the innovation wasn't happening in the industry. It was really difficult for small business to even understand what the industry was about and how to engage. And it's a not-for-profit organisation, and it is a partnership. So my partners include National Grid, so also Scottish Power, and many of the other utilities. So it's a true partnership. Now, why we say partnership is, as a small business, the EIC had to almost have equal footing with the utilities, because we have to have because we're operating on behalf of the innovators. So we have to be in a position to say to National Grid and the size of National Grid, thank you, but that doesn't work for small business. and that then National Grid then change how they do their processes, their language. And we've just heard a great introductory speech this morning with Paula Reynolds and Nora Brownell, I think. They were absolutely spectacular, said all the things that innovators in the EIC, they really articulated our experience of working with utilities. So that's what we do. So we've now got a community of over 10,500 innovators. It's a dynamic community, so it's changing all the time. So we've seen in the last, obviously 2 years, real upsurge in companies in AI, machine learning. They're all part now of the community. And our job is to make sure we have innovators ready and waiting so that when the industry puts out a call, we've got the right people there to respond to those calls. And at the moment, those calls are between 95 and 100% successful.
Wow.
Because the skill is
incredible
in getting the industry's question right. And that's the bit they're not very good at.
I think that's really important what you were saying, because actually innovation, we sometimes jump straight to tech, which is absolutely one part of that, but also it is about language and collaboration and community. So much of innovation is just that relationship building and making sure that it works. Today at Innovation Day, we are, of course, going to be talking about lots of different aspects of that. And you are on a panel yourself this afternoon. Could you give us a little sneak peek of some of the things that you're going to be speaking about?
So what's great is we've got an amazing panel. We've got, it's quite unique, really. We have got somebody from the Energy Systems Catapult, somebody from Samsung, and then somebody from a startup, all talking about regulation and what would we need to do, how regulation impacts on their day-to-day, what change in regulation needs to happen in real time to promote innovation. And it's so pertinent because I've actually just written my board report for my board, which is at the end of this week. And in that board report, it's all about how do we drive step change in the industry, how do we work better with regulators to help them make the right decisions, and actually how do we help reshape regulation so that it becomes fit for our future purpose of where we're going and not just an iteration of where we've come from. So hopefully the guys will together come up with some really good answers.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I guess I'm wondering, when I hear the words innovation or AI or tech, my brain maybe jumps to some of the big firms like Amazon and Google and these kind of companies. Maybe it doesn't quite jump to the energy sector first. How is innovation coming out of the energy sector? What are we learning from some of the leaders in this space?
It is really interesting. They say apparently 75% of innovation comes out of small business. So that's why it's really important for big business, who do innovate themselves, have entrepreneurs within their businesses. But if you think if 75% is coming out of small business, they have to work in partnership with smaller businesses. So what we're seeing is sensors that go on the lines to, it's called dynamic line rating, and to help get more out of the assets that we've already got there. There's huge amounts of stuff now learning around AI. So AI, if you believe the rhetoric, which is lots of companies have tons of data, but they're actually only using 5% of the data that they hold. So if you can imagine, if we can then start extracting a lot of the data in terms of how assets perform across the industry, if we understand more about the demand and we hear about data centres, but what is the true demand of that, then the data, and machine learning and AI in support of the analysis of that data can really change the face of the industry. And the saving then to industry, to consumers, to climate change, the use of energy, it's phenomenal really. So it can come from small business as well as big business.
Yeah, and I think that's where this innovation centre has that relationship at the heart of it, where you are in deep relationship and conversation with those small businesses who actually are very agile, are very creative, and can also help some of the bigger organisations to really shift the way that they think about things. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, because I just think it's really helpful to actually see what innovation means in the energy sector and also see what it impacts. It's for me and you who have energy bills to pay. It's for the climate that is obviously changing. It's for net zero targets. I guess to end, I would just love to know, is there anything you're really excited about that's on the horizon, or any conversations that you're having that just make you think, I think that'll be a brilliant addition to what all of us in this energy sector are doing?
I think fundamentally the change will come. It's not about tech. It's not about, it's about people.
Yeah.
And what I hear now more and more is people understanding that working together is the answer. And I have just heard these two fabulous women, Paula and Nora, saying exactly that this morning. It is about how businesses come together, how people come together, and how we learn from each other, and how we utilise all that collective knowledge and brain power. And that's what we're going to need to meet net zero and create, a future that is fit for our kids.
Absolutely. Well, Denise, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of Innovation Day.
I think innovation is literally the only thing that's going to get us from here to there.
That was Nora Brunel, founding partner of ESPY Energy Solutions, and I could not have put that better myself. Before we sat down to talk, Nora was on a panel here at Innovation Day, so let's tune in to hear a little bit of what she said.
I think this is just an incredible time to be in this industry, which frankly, 20 years ago wasn't all that exciting. And what I see is an extraordinary amount of innovation, whether it's serving the data centers, whether it's empowering customers, whether it's increasing the capacity on existing infrastructure, whether it's attracting new businesses and new jobs. It's unbelievable, and it's not often in the world that we get a chance to rebuild a mature industry and make it fit for purpose. The challenge is going to be reestablishing a business model that is appropriate for attracting the kind of businesses and collaboration that we need.
Welcome, Nora Burnell, to the Clean Energy Revolution podcast. And we are, of course, at Innovation Day at National Grid. You were on a panel this morning. I would love to hear a little bit about what you were speaking on.
How to be a revolutionary is really what it was all about, so this is perfect. We were talking about the transition, how to manage it, what kinds of changes we need both to the utility model and the regulatory model to encourage faster, broader deployment of the zillions of technologies that can help us address the multiple challenges of economic growth, climate change, and by the way, I think they're one and the same, affordability, and move from a fossil fuel centrally broadcast energy sector, generation sector, to a more distributed generation with huge different demands by customers.
And when you think about innovation, where does that word sit within the picture that you're painting of what's next for this industry?
I think innovation is literally the only thing that's going to get us from here to there. So we've been hugely successful, I like to say, on living on our great-grandparents' largesse. They invested in a network in many ways whose benefits they didn't see. We have been ignoring our network and focusing really on just the generation transition, which is great, but there are so many more things we can do to increase efficiency, increase transparency, leverage the existing assets because we can't afford just to start all over and build, and empower customers. I'm all about empowering customers.
Absolutely. And I think that's something throughout this season on the podcast, we've not just spoken about the technological advances that need to come, the procedures and the regulations, but actually it's about people at the end of it. It's about communities who are at the heart of all of this. Is there anything coming up? Maybe it's something that you've heard today or something that you're seeing on the horizon that just gets you really motivated in this space, because often it feels like turning a huge ship and it can feel like a long process. But is there anything that makes you think, no, we're going to get this done and this is an exciting thing on the horizon?
Wow, there are so many things. And what I like to say is this kind of change either happens with you or it happens to you. And you simply need to witness the transition in retail, the transition in healthcare, the transition in media, you name it. And people have either adopted technology and gotten with the program, or people have innovated around them.
Yeah.
So an example is we see the development and the demands of all these new data center, cryptocurrency, if you're into it, AI. And I'm in a state where the utility said, I'm sorry, we can't support it. And the governor basically said, oh, you will. But these guys have big balance sheets, so they'll do it on their own. But more importantly, I see a way for us to create a future where everyone benefits and where the utility is an enabler of so many other solutions. And one of the exciting things about the technologies that we see is they solve for multiple problems. This isn't one-off. This isn't like building a nuclear plant and there you go. These are things like line vision, who's appearing today, that increase the capacity of existing transmission, but also give you asset health data. Climate change has dramatically changed the lifespans of different assets. And so this helps us manage that more efficiently. It also gives us data that allow us to plan. So we're planning for this vast new distributed network, again, with these extraordinary demands of both the economy and climate change. And again, I think we need to treat climate change as an economic issue as well as a moral one. And so I see the opportunity here to create a vastly different future that is affordable, efficient, and also engages the utility as I think, a larger partner to their communities. I think the utilities would argue they always have been, and they certainly have. But I think there's a way to just change that relationship in a way that people are more excited about the sector and more excited about the benefits they get.
Absolutely. And I think that is something that is, beginning to shift. And partly it's because you wake up in the morning and you turn on your light and you probably don't think anything of it.
Exactly.
But there's been all of this innovation for 10s, 50, 100 years behind that light switch turning on. But absolutely, innovation is coming forward. So Denise, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about what you were speaking on your panel. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day at Innovation Day here at National Grid.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's just a great crowd and so many opinion leaders. And I'm really thrilled. I got to say, National Grid, of all the utilities, has really stepped up, and that's risky place to be in this world, stepped up to provide that innovation leadership. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. When you think of Amazon, you might just think of packages being delivered to your house, but actually Amazon are working in the space of energy. I sat down with Jake Auster from Amazon Web Services and heard all about the amount of energy that they consume, but also produce, and heard a little bit about the projects that they have on the go. Collaboration is a key part of innovation, and he was here at Innovation Day to share some of that. Here is what he had to say. And we're both at Innovation Day here in London with National Grid, and you have been on a panel. So please, tell us a little bit about what you were chatting to the guests here today about.
Yeah, it was great. I was part of a panel with Hitachi and with Statnet, and of course moderated by National Grid. And we had a great conversation about how to lead the charge going forward, about decarbonizing the electricity sector, growing grids to power businesses, and then of course the connections between those of us on the demand side, as we are at AWS, the suppliers such as Hitachi, and then of course those who are building out the grid like National Grid to be able to power our business. So we had a great sort of well-rounded panel from different players across the power sector to be able to talk about what innovation in the future looks like and how we collaborate to deliver.
And I think that is really important, that often we think of the energy sector as just the ones who are making the energy, transmitting the energy, but actually we are all part of it because we are the end users. How important is collaboration when we think about innovation of the energy sector?
Collaboration is a key part of how we think about innovation in the sector. For us, we find ourselves to be, not just customers of the power sector, but partners to the power sector, and then also participants in the power sector. One of the things I discussed on the panel that may not be widely known about Amazon is that we're actually the world's largest corporate buyer of renewable energy. We have more than 500 wind and solar projects across more than 25 countries around the world for a total of more than 28 gigawatts of new capacity that's added to grids around the world that are powering our business. So for us, we are not just consuming electricity from the system, but we're also enabling new renewable energy on the grids where we operate. So for us, collaboration is critically important because it enables us to work with those developers who are building those projects, and then of course the transmission system operators who are building the grids that so many of those projects that connect into. And so that collaboration is really critical for us to be able to achieve the goals for our business.
Okay, well, I did not know that. So there you go. That is a learning point. And maybe when people hear the name Amazon, I know you're Amazon Web Services, but Amazon people maybe just think buying stuff online. What have been the challenges as you've kind of grown and developed into the space of energy? What are some of the barriers that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, so I work at Amazon Web Services, which is the cloud computing part of our business. So certainly, I think a lot of people think of Amazon and they think about the stores part of our business and the retail part of our business that brings packages to so many millions of customers around the world. But we're also a huge part of the digitalization that is impacting people's lives around the world and is so important to different sectors around the world, from startups to large enterprises to governments. And so, when we think about the different ways we're enabling innovation and how we're doing that in the power sector, we're looking at how we are both investing in new sources generation, and then also how we're customers of the demand sector. In our retail business that you mentioned, one of the places where we interact with the electricity sector heavily is we are deploying electric vehicles around the world to deliver packages to customers. And there, of course, we need to have charging infrastructure that powers those electric vehicles. And so that's a big part of ways that we're working with the sector to drive innovation that's important to our business, and then, of course, important to our customers.
And that is obviously a key bit of keeping air clean, part of net zero, part of really bringing business along. And yeah, just to end, I would love to know, is there anything that's exciting that's coming up on the horizon, or things that you maybe have been hearing today at Innovation Day that you think that is a really exciting part of innovation in the pursuit that we're all involved in when it comes to net zero and really getting our energy sector as efficient as possible?
Yeah, I think today at Innovation Day and hearing from others on the panel, one of the things that was really exciting to me was how focused we all are on common goals. You mentioned net zero. For Amazon, I mentioned that we're driving towards our goals. What's really important to us is our sustainability goals. So we have a goal across Amazon to be net zero carbon by 2040. As part of that, and within that, we're also striving to be powered by 100% renewable energy. And our goal was to be there by 2030. We're now on track to match all of the electricity we consume with renewable energy by 2025. So 5 years ahead of target. Last count, we were at 90% in our 2022 sustainability report. So we're really excited to be moving forward on that towards those goals. And I think, here today, what I heard on the panel, what I've heard from others I've spoken to, is really we're all focused on a similar trajectory. We're all focused on decarbonizing the power system and ensuring that we have electricity grid that is built for future growth, and then also towards achieving a net zero future.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing about that and actually showing the role of business. Often business maybe isn't included, in this conversation as much. So thank you for sharing that. And please, enjoy the rest of Innovation Day.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Many thanks to our great guests for joining us today, and thank you for listening. For more, please go to nationalgrid.com. Thank you so much.